I watched my mother-in-law's face turn white as my husband Brandon stood up at the boardroom table, his voice deadly calm. "Before you fire my wife, Diane, you should know I've been working with the FDA for 6 months investigating your illegal supplements." The room fell silent as he pulled out a thick manila folder. "One phone call from me, and your entire wellness empire crumbles." What happened next changed everything, but let me tell you how we got there. My name is Ashley Williams, and at 28, I thought I'd figured out most of life's challenges. Marriage to Brandon? Check. Decent job handling social media marketing? Check. Mother-in-law who made my existence feel like a daily performance review? Well, that one I was still working on. Diane Richardson owned Radiant Wellness Company, and unfortunately for me, she also owned my paycheck. Every morning, I'd walk into that gleaming office with its motivational posters about optimal living and body transformation, knowing I'd become her personal before and after project. The irony wasn't lost on me that I marketed wellness products while feeling anything but well myself. "Ashley, honey, did you see the engagement on yesterday's Instagram post?" Diane would ask, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Then came the real message. "Maybe we should feature some of our success stories more prominently. Clients who really embody our brand values." Translation: hide the fat girl behind the camera. But here's the thing about working for family. You can't exactly storm out dramatically or tell your boss what you really think. Not when your boss is your husband's mother and Sunday dinners depend on keeping the peace. Brandon always said his mom meant well, that her comments came from a place of caring. Sometimes I wondered if he actually believed that, or if he'd just gotten really good at pretending. The wellness industry has this funny way of making everything sound like love. Diane didn't criticize my weight. She showed concern for my health. She didn't exclude me from company events. She wanted me to feel comfortable until I was ready to shine. Every cruel comment came wrapped in ribbon and good intentions. Then came the family rule that changed everything. We were sitting around their marble kitchen island one Sunday evening when Diane dropped her bombshell. "I've been thinking about the future," she announced, cutting her organic, gluten-free dessert into precise squares. "Brandon, you know how important legacy is to me, how important representing our values is to this family." I felt my stomach drop before she even finished. "I think it's best if you two wait on having children until Ashley gets to a healthier place. I mean, pregnancy weight on top of, well, you understand. Plus, what kind of message does that send about our wellness brand?" The silence that followed could have filled a canyon. Brandon's fork stayed frozen halfway to his mouth. I stared at my plate, feeling heat crawl up my neck. Makes sense, right? Control someone's career, their social media presence, their seat at family gatherings. Why not control their reproductive choices too? "Mom," Brandon started, but Diane held up her perfectly manicured hand. "I'm not saying never, sweetheart, just saying timing matters. Ashley could use some motivation, and honestly, this gives her a real goal to work toward. Win-win for everyone." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Brandon slept beside me. His breathing was steady and peaceful, but my mind raced through every family dinner, every company meeting, every casual comment about my appearance disguised as health advice. The woman who'd raised my husband had just told me I wasn't worthy of becoming a mother until I met her physical standards. And the worst part? A tiny voice in my head wondered if maybe she was right. Over the following months, something shifted in our house. Family gatherings became minefields where every bite I took felt monitored. Diane started gifting me gym memberships and workout clothes for every occasion. She'd share articles about pre-pregnancy fitness and optimizing fertility through weight management. What I didn't know then was that Brandon had been watching everything more carefully than I realized. While I felt increasingly isolated and worthless, my husband was quietly building something that would change our lives forever. But first, life had one more curveball to throw our way. The curveball came in the form of 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday. I stared at it in our bathroom, hands shaking, wondering if the universe had a twisted sense of humor. After months of Diane's "No Grandkids Until You're Worthy" campaign, my body had decided to ignore the memo entirely. Brandon found me sitting on the bathroom floor, still holding the test. His face went through about 12 different expressions in 5 seconds. Joy, panic, love, more panic. Holy shit, he whispered. That about sums it up, I managed. We sat there on the cold tiles, both knowing this changed everything. The baby I dreamed about for years was finally happening. But instead of pure happiness, dread crept up my spine like ice water. Diane was going to lose her mind. And honestly, I wasn't sure our marriage would survive what came next. We waited 2 weeks before telling anyone. 2 weeks of me staring at myself in mirrors, wondering if I was showing yet, imagining Diane's reaction playing on repeat in my head. Brandon kept saying everything would be fine, that she'd come around when she saw how happy we were. Sweet man. Sometimes I envied his ability to see the best in people, especially when those people had spent months telling his wife she wasn't good enough to reproduce. The family dinner where we broke the news will forever be burned into my memory. Diane had made her famous quinoa salad and spent 20 minutes explaining its nutritional benefits while pointedly looking at my plate. Standard Tuesday evening entertainment. So we have some news, Brandon said, reaching for my hand across the table. Diane's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Her wellness guru smile faltered slightly. We're pregnant, I said quickly, like ripping off a bandage. The silence that followed wasn't the good kind. Diane's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and something that looked distinctly like rage before settling on a tight smile that never reached her eyes. Well, she said finally, setting down her fork with surgical precision. This is unexpected. Unexpected. Not congratulations. Not how wonderful. Unexpected. We're really excited, Brandon said, his voice carrying a warning edge I rarely heard. I'm sure you are. Diane's tone could have frosted windows. But Ashley, honey, do you have any idea what this does to our brand image? What this says about our wellness philosophy? There it was. My pregnancy wasn't a blessing or a miracle. It was a marketing problem. Mom, Brandon started. But Diane was just getting warmed up. I mean, we've built this entire company around optimal health and body transformation. And now our marketing coordinator is going to be prominently pregnant, while clearly not representing our core values. I felt my face burn. I can still do my job, Diane. Can you? She leaned back in her chair, studying me like I was a particularly disappointing quarterly report. Because frankly, this is exactly what I was trying to prevent. The optics alone are going to be a nightmare. Brandon's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Diane had already moved into solution mode. The scary thing about Diane wasn't her cruelty. It was her efficiency. She approached problems like military campaigns, and apparently my pregnancy was a problem requiring strategic intervention. That's when things got really dangerous. The next week, Diane called me into her office with an excitement that immediately put me on edge. She'd arranged her desk like a presentation, with glossy brochures and supplement bottles lined up like little soldiers. I've been thinking about our situation, she began, and I noticed how my pregnancy had become our situation. What if we could turn this into an opportunity? She slid a bottle across the desk toward me. The label read Prenatal Radiance in elegant script, with promises of maintaining your glow throughout pregnancy and supporting optimal maternal wellness. We've been developing this in our research division, Diane explained, her voice taking on that sales pitch quality I knew so well. It's the future of prenatal care, helps expectant mothers maintain their figure while ensuring baby gets everything they need. I picked up the bottle, reading the ingredient list. Half the names I couldn't even pronounce. Is this FDA approved? I asked. Diane waved her hand dismissively. The FDA is decades behind on wellness innovation. This is cutting-edge stuff, Ashley. Some of our beta testers have had incredible results. Beta testers. She was talking about my pregnancy like it was a product launch. I don't know, Diane. I should probably ask my doctor first. Her smile got sharper. Of course, honey, but think about it. You could be our success story. Document your journey. Show other women how to do pregnancy the right way. Turn what could be a brand liability into our biggest asset. I took the bottle home, but something in my gut told me to research first. Late that night, while Brandon slept, I dove deep into Google searches about the ingredients. What I found made my blood run cold. 3 of the components had been banned in Europe for potential pregnancy complications. Another was under investigation for links to early labor. The cutting-edge supplement my mother-in-law wanted me to take was basically a cocktail of untested chemicals with fancy marketing copy. She was willing to risk her grandchild's life to maintain her brand image. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about control or criticism anymore. Diane had moved past emotional abuse into territory that could actually harm my baby. The woman who claimed everything was about optimal health was pushing experimental drugs on her pregnant daughter-in-law. I printed out every research article I could find and showed Brandon the next morning. Watched his face go pale as he read through the warnings and potential side effects. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "She actually expected you to take this?" "She's planning to document it for marketing," I told him. "Turn my pregnancy into her promotional campaign." Something shifted in Brandon's expression that morning. Something cold and determined that I'd never seen before. He kissed me goodbye and told me he'd handle it, but I could tell his mind was already working on something bigger than just saying no to his mother. What I didn't know was that my husband had been playing a much longer game than anyone realized. 2 weeks later, Diane announced she was calling an emergency board meeting. The agenda was suspiciously vague, but her assistant let slip that there would be significant staffing changes discussed. I didn't need a decoder ring to figure out I was about to be publicly fired for failing to represent company values. Brandon seemed strangely calm about the whole thing, almost excited, which should have been my first clue that something was brewing. The morning of the board meeting, he squeezed my hand and said, "Trust me, okay? Whatever happens in there, just trust me." I walked into that boardroom expecting to be humiliated. What happened instead changed everything we thought we knew about power, family, and what my quiet husband was capable of when someone threatened the people he loved. The manila folder hit the boardroom table with a sound that seemed to echo forever. Brandon had never looked more like a stranger to me, standing there in his crisp button-down with evidence that could destroy his own mother's life. The executives around the table shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in their coffee cups. 6 months, he repeated, his voice cutting through the silence. 6 months of documenting every illegal supplement, every false health claim, every FDA violation this company has committed. Diane's face had gone from white to gray. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the tremor in her hands as she gripped the edge of the table. "Brandon, what are you talking about?" He opened the folder like he was revealing a royal flush. Documents spilled across the mahogany surface, lab reports, email printouts, photos of supplement bottles with ingredients lists, highlighted in angry red ink. "The prenatal pills you pushed on Ashley, banned in 12 countries for causing premature labor," his fingers stabbed at a particular document. "The weight loss capsules you've been selling to teenagers. Contains a substance that's been linked to heart arrhythmia." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. I watched my husband transform into someone I'd never seen before. Methodical, ruthless, completely in control. Where had this man been hiding? "Then there's my personal favorite," Brandon continued, pulling out what looked like bank statements. "The testimonials from your so-called beta testers. Turns out half of them don't exist, and the other half were paid actors from that casting agency downtown." Diane found her voice, though it came out as more of a croak. "You're bluffing." Brandon pulled out his phone and set it on speaker. The dial tone filled the room, followed by a crisp professional voice. "FDA Consumer Complaint Coordinator. This is Jennifer speaking." "Hi, Jennifer. This is Brandon Richardson. I'm ready to submit my formal complaint and evidence package regarding Radiant Wellness Company." "Wonderful, Mr. Richardson. We've been waiting for your call. Should I connect you to Agent Morrison?" Brandon's finger hovered over the end call button. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a fire everyone could smell but couldn't see. "Hang up," Diane whispered. But Brandon wasn't done, not even close. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, ending the call but keeping the phone visible. "You're going to publicly apologize to Ashley, right here, right now, in front of everyone." Diane's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "You're going to step down from active management and let the board run this company properly. No more experimental drugs. No more fake testimonials. No more treating employees like your personal improvement projects." One of the board members, I think it was Robert from accounting, cleared his throat nervously. "Brandon, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No." Brandon's voice could have cut glass. "We're done with private discussions. We're done with family meetings, where my wife gets treated like a problem that needs solving." He turned to face me directly, and suddenly the stranger disappeared. This was my husband again, the man who brought me coffee every morning and rubbed my feet after long days. Ashley has been documenting every conversation, every cruel comment, every attempt to control her body and our reproductive choices. She's been building her own case for workplace harassment while I handled the federal crimes. Wait, what? The room spun slightly. I'd been taking notes about Diane's behavior for my own sanity, never thinking they might be evidence. But Brandon had been watching, planning, building a case while I thought he was just staying quiet to keep peace. "So here's the deal, Mom." The word mom sounded like an insult coming from his mouth. "Treat my wife with respect, clean up this company, and maybe we can all pretend to be a family. Or I make one phone call and you spend the next decade explaining to federal prosecutors why you thought it was acceptable to sell dangerous drugs to pregnant women." Diane looked around the table, searching for allies who suddenly found their shoes fascinating. Power, I realized, was just an illusion that disappeared the moment someone called your bluff. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words barely audible. "Louder," Brandon said coldly. Everything had changed, but somehow I had a feeling the real transformation was just beginning. "Louder," Brandon repeated, and I watched the most powerful woman I knew crumble like stale cookies. "I'm sorry, Ashley." Diane's voice shook. "I'm sorry for everything I said about your weight, about the baby, about you not being good enough. I was wrong." The boardroom felt like a courtroom where the verdict had just been read. But Brandon wasn't finished dismantling his mother's empire. "You'll also transfer Ashley to head of ethical marketing, full creative control, no interference." He slid another document across the table. "This is her new contract. Double salary, stock options, and a clause that says any attempt to fire her without board approval triggers an immediate FDA investigation." I stared at the numbers on that contract. More money than I'd ever imagined making. More power than Diane had ever let me dream of having. Robert from accounting was frantically taking notes like his life depended on it. The other executives looked like they were watching a tennis match where the ball was made of dynamite. "How long have you been planning this?" I whispered to Brandon. "Since the first time she made you cry at Sunday dinner," he said softly. "I just needed enough evidence to make it stick." Diane signed every document without reading them. Her wellness empire, built on lies and cruelty, was being restructured by her own son. The irony was beautiful. 3 months later, I was showing enough that strangers smiled at me in grocery stores. Real smiles, not the fake ones I'd gotten used to at family dinners. Diane kept her distance, attending court-ordered therapy sessions and learning words like boundaries and emotional abuse. The company actually started making money once we stopped selling fake miracle cures. Turns out people appreciate honesty in their wellness products. Who knew? Brandon never did make that call to the FDA, but the threat still hangs in the air like expensive perfume. Some days I catch Diane looking at me with something that might be respect or fear. Honestly, I'll take either one. Our daughter kicks constantly now, like she's already practicing to stand up for herself. I have a feeling she's going to be just fine. After all, she's got parents who know the difference between keeping peace and keeping dignity. And her grandmother. Well, let's just say she's learning that lesson too. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to shrink anymore.